Welcome to another episode of All American Wing Shooting Podcast. Today is probably the most important guest I've ever had because of Matt Dubnik, I picked up a shotgun. Matt, welcome to the show. I don't even know how to introduce you because I know you wear so many different hats. So give us a little rundown.
Well, I'm just dad and husband, and the rest is just details. But I think going back, maybe our original involvement came through Ducks Unlimited, and that's an organization that has pretty much meant everything in the world to me. I got my start as a volunteer when I was at Georgia Tech more than 20 years ago,
That's one
and
thing we don't hold against you. You and Trevor Santos are like the only non-bulldog.
we listen. We don't use that word in my household, even though that's where my wife went to school. But yes, long time volunteer for Ducks Unlimited. Started at the collegiate level, moved on up the ladder, as they say, and have spent time over the last couple of years as a national board member, and continuing that service on the national board. Very involved with public policy, and how that affects the mission of wetlands conservation. Small business owner based in Northeast Georgia, dad to two boys that love to duck hunt with me and run the dog. Have that furry four-legged friend named Burton, Chocolate Lab, and my best friend in the world, my wife, Katie.
Oh, and the crazy thing is I grew up with Katie and I loved her so much.
Yep.
We went to different schools, and who knew how our lives would like circle back around because of a random intro where I got to be the person you guys chose to bring in women to Ducks Unlimited, and I never forget that and how special that is because it's become, I feel like, my role in the industry. I feel like almost everywhere I go is I open doors just to bring more ladies in no matter what we're doing. And
Without a
that's how
doubt.
it started. So to catch you guys up, our hometown is Gainesville, Georgia, and we have a pretty strong DU chapter. Believe it or not, here in Georgia is kind of the running joke that Georgia's such a big deal with DU. But we love our wood ducks, and we always travel out of state, right?
There you go. That's the name of the game.
Actually, I got a wood duck hat from Mossy Pond, and I wear it so proud. So
I love it. I love it. Yeah, the joke has been, I spent 6 years on staff with Ducks Unlimited, and at the time in the 2005 to 2010 range, Georgia was number 43 out of 50 states for duck harvest, but we were number 7 out of 50 states in fundraising for Ducks Unlimited. So literally the exact inverse of those two numbers, and so very, very
yeah,
cool.
you take something away, and you really realize how precious it is.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
So it's so funny that you say that. And you got started in volunteerism. I was doing Pistol World, and you guys reached out to me because I was rallying up women that wanted to shoot guns and understood the importance of the outdoors. And because I was raised a hunter, it was a natural transition for me to join y'all's committee, not having a clue about duck hunting. I had never been duck hunting before, and you guys took me in with my nasty attitude about short hairs and all the things. And I'd come around. Needless to say, I'll never forget getting my first lab, and you were the first person I texted. I'm like, okay, Matt, happy hypocrite these days. But I'll never be able to thank you for what you did.
Well, I've always said that when it comes to the dog family, right? Like those of us
Yeah.
who run dogs in competitions, whether that's hunt test, whether that's SRS, field trials, or just some neighborhood game to see which dog can run the fastest. Like the dog family and the dog world is just that. It's a small world of family. And, I've been in a situation, I think this is the epitome of the dog family. My first dog was very, very sick. I was duck hunting in Northeast Arkansas. I called a buddy who's a vet in Northeast North Carolina. I said, Bob, there's a problem. I need your help. Here's where I am. He said, sit there for 30 seconds and take the next phone call that you get. He picked up the phone, called a vet that was within 30 miles of where I was. and within 60 seconds I'm on the phone with that vet and I'm getting treatment. That's the dog world. I mean, that's why we
Yeah.
do it. Now, granted, they also get in the bed and they cuddle up with us and we love them and they chase ducks, they point quail. Right? I tell people I don't know a living human being that loves to duck hunt more than I do, but let me introduce you to my dog. And that statement will be false, you know. So we could go on and on talking about my love for dogs, your love for dogs, and how they all bring us together. But I mean that's the name of the game.
Well, I know that we share another common opinion with the fact that these habitat organizations, and for us, it's been Ducks Unlimited that brought us together, are probably the best circle to find more the most like-minded friends that you want to help you raise your kids. And being a female influencer and bringing more women into it, it's like we're always looking for women to help us. It takes a village to raise a kid, and I have an endless list of people in the outdoors that have helped me make my kids who they are, mold them, create their passion, open doors for them to grow, whether it's leadership or conservation or experience, just help them find themselves and become their best selves. And so I know people that are listening are like, gosh, she's back on her soapbox, but I can't say it enough. And you were the one that originally opened that door. I'll never forget coming to the first banquet. You're like, yeah, just set up your booth. I thought it was like a vendor event. I had no idea what we were coming to. I brought two girlfriends and we had the most fun. And I swear, I think it was like 2 years later, I think we were the only women there besides the couple from West Hall that's always there and his wife is always there. Their last name starts with a B.
Yes, and so I
I
think
can't
that
remember their name. But besides her, it was like, that's it. 2 years later, we've got like 5 women's like owned companies that are buying tables. I mean, it's like it happened overnight.
and I was about to say that. So you're referring to Greg and Barbara Bostwick,
Bostwick.
and their son Joey is still on our committee, and they are at the banquet every year. They're one of the first to buy a table, and Miss Bostwick will tell you that her husband might be there to buy things, but she's there to win things, and so I mean, they love it, but. I think it also creates, to your point, when women see other women involved, and it could be in anything at a Ducks Unlimited banquet, on a board in your community, running for public office, whatever it is, coaching a little league team. I believe, and I've seen, especially through Ducks Unlimited, when women see other women involved, they feel more comfortable and they feel
Mhm.
like, hey, this is not. And look, let's be honest for a minute. 30, 40 years ago, Ducks Unlimited was known and considered as a good old boys club. And now I look around at our national board of directors and I look at the diversity and the presence of women that are there. I look at our staff and right, all those things like more involvement means more involvement. And when people get excited about it, they get engaged. But it goes back though to your theme of like-minded people get in a room
Mm.
and start cutting up and having a good time. And then it doesn't matter where you're from, uh, how old you are, or any other, determining factor about who you are. You're there as a waterfowler and a dog enthusiast and just want to talk about being in the mud and shooting greenheads, right?
And where are we going next? Like, it's so funny how many plans get made at banquets.
Yes. Trips, duck
Yeah.
clubs,
Yes.
yes, rendezvous in other time zones. That's the name of the game.
So for ladies that are listening, the DU banquets, I'm sure it can sound a little intimidating, especially because I was a single mom and I've drugged my dad to so many Ducks Unlimited banquets that everybody thinks he's a hunter and he's never been duck hunting, but he loves our community and he is so supportive and he has a heck of a time when he comes. But the thing about it that it seems intimidating, but the committee of men that brought me in literally told me, we want our families to be involved. We all have young kids. We want to create a culture that is welcoming for women and for kids. And I was sold. I was like, I will
Mhm.
figure out the rest of it. So when we talk about figuring out the rest of it, let's talk about how sneaky you are. So I had this other business that I started, which was kind of a random thing with pistols. And it probably could have been a big deal if I hadn't have had the heart of a hunter, right? That's really just who I am. So because of you, I might have wrecked my entire future when I could have been probably extremely financially sound.
Just send me an invoice, okay?
So Matt and his wife Katie have a marketing company here in town, and I was like, "Y'all, I've got this crazy idea. Let's come up with a logo. Let's do this." So we were building. Things are happening. Then Matt brings me into DU, and then I get a dog, and things just start happening. And then all of a sudden, one day in the mail, I get an invitation to a fundraiser for a man in our community running for sheriff. My picture's on it, and I'm hosting the fundraiser. That thing about it, I go, man, I'm like, what is this? And I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, oh, you'll be fine. And that's how it started.
That's how it started. And you picked up a shotgun and you haven't put one down, have you?
I know, but let's be real. I could keep everyone safe. I could not make champions at that moment. And it was a huge, intimidating moment for me. And it was like, I know, like, I'm a competitor, right? So it was like, I need a coach. It was just the instant thing and I'll never forget texting the whole community. I'm like, y'all better find me a coach. Y'all better find me a coach. And y'all blew up y'all's phone. And I met Demas, and I still talk to him every single day. And that was in 2016 that we found him. And so, he's opened up so many doors for me and built skills. And it really does take a village, no matter if you're raising a kid in this world or just growing as a new shooter or a new hunter.
Yeah. And I mean, I think one of the questions I get a lot is from that new duck hunter is, hey, I'm going duck hunting. What do I need? And, the
You're like a good buddy with a full trailer.
It's like, when you ask a duck hunter a question like that, how much time do you have? How many days can you take for me? Just where do you want to start? You want to talk about shotguns? You want to talk about duck calls? You want to talk about Sitka gear? You want to talk about, shotgun shells? You want, do you want to talk about what we're going to cook when you get to duck club? Like, how are you going? Do you want to stop at Max along the way? Like
Oh my gosh.
I think that's the fun part in this game is when you need that coach, that big brother, big sister, when you just need advice, everybody's so willing to help and everybody's just willing to, because that's that common theme. And we love to talk about being in the mud with our dog and shooting greenheads, right?
Yeah. And so because of that sense of community, I've been a part of a community since we started. Because of my confidence through DU, I branched out into so many different organizations. And I get to collab all these organizations together. And it has been a blast. Like, I was thinking about when I asked you to come on, I was like, how am I ever going to get through this whole story? I mean, like, it's literally never ending of how many people have influenced my life to get to this point. And I feel like I'm actually just starting, because so many people have no idea that when I started posting on Instagram, I was learning. I was learning along the way. There were so many firsts, and it was devastating when I got hacked and deleted, because I didn't realize how much those memories meant to me and and those people that I met along the way. I'll never be able to retrace that tour, I say journey, part of my life again, the way that it happened the first time.
Well, but I do think that, to your point, it's both about seeking out that community, but it's just asking somebody, hey, could you help me with this? Could you introduce me over there? Could you teach me this? Because look, you make a simple ask, and I mean, your story's a prime example. Look where it goes. Look where it
Oh
takes
yeah,
you.
y'all opened a door for me, and I just ran with it. And I never said no matter how intimidating or how I didn't have any idea what was going on. But I always knew there was somebody there who was going to hold my hand or was going to answer the phone. So I just didn't worry about it. And it was so much fun. It's been so much fun. So because of that, and a way for me to give back, I woke up one day and I was like, I finally feel like I know enough to kind of drag some people along with me. And so I started Women of Wing Shooting. And because of, my experience through Upland, I have a lot to give back there through my opportunities that are happening. Man, I can't even believe my duck hunting opportunities I've had just in the last few years, I realize how important it is. Like, you're never going to be an expert. You know, you're never going to rise to the top or finish out, or, you know, you just got to share the knowledge that you have at the time, because somebody else out there is needing to grow a little bit so that they can share what they have, and the domino effect of that. And so, because of the communities that I've been a part of, which you were a huge part of getting that whole system started, I opened up this thing, Women of Wing Shooting, just to serve women where they are. Because, you know, like, we have banquets once or twice a year, and we have season just for a few short weeks. And there's a couple of conventions out there, but they're really hard to get to when you've got kids full of their own schedule. And it's like, how do we keep women committed? I heard this statistic, and I'm sure with your political world, you deal with these numbers all the time, but women are the fastest growing demographic, but they're also the first to fall off. And him, he was like, okay, well, we've figured out how to get them here, but now we got to figure out how to keep them here.
Yeah. And I think, you know, one of the comments, and John Tomke is a former national president of Ducks Unlimited as a volunteer. And John had a very decorated corporate career and is just so beloved and well respected inside the Ducks Unlimited community. And he coined a phrase that so many of us use, and it is, I came for the cause, but I stayed for the people. And I
Mhm.
think, to your point, it's all about finding that community and not being afraid to ask to be a part of that community. But then it's saying, I want to be involved. I want to be engaged. It's raising your hand and saying, give me a job. I came to work. And that could be anything from being in a duck club to being at a hunt test to being on a DU committee and I believe in it. It's giving back, right? It's finding
Oh,
that
yeah.
community, but it's not being afraid to say, put me to work. Can I put out decoys this morning, or can I set up the silent auction? Right?
Right.
It's being involved, but it's asking to be involved as well.
Yeah. And having the confidence to do that. Because we create communities that are welcoming. And I really
Mhm.
feel like that. It's intimidating to walk through the door, but my gosh, you're going to miss out if you don't.
I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more.
Yeah, it was funny when I was home in the fall for our Gainesville chapter banquets. It was crazy to me how many people showed up early.
Mhm.
There'd be 10 people there, like, eating lunch. We're like,
Yeah.
we don't even open the door till 6, you know?
They want to get the early bird discounts.
You know, it was so fun. But JC, let's see, just 3 weeks ago,
Mhm.
I would say JC had her final banquet at UGA. And who knew that that kid that I drug around way back when would end up pretty much following in your footsteps? Here she is, graduating UGA. Okay, I mean, like, not those footsteps, but ag econ degree, looking to go into politics, so passionate about community conservation and the ducks. And she made, I didn't open those doors for her. I introduced her to y'all. She totally hijacked my friend group, and she found herself at third term and all the things that DU offers. And the one thing that I can say that they do above every other organization out there is their outreach and leadership training for youth. It's unmatched. And I personally saw that in my own home.
Yeah. When you stop and look, and we as an organization 15 years ago really, you know, looked at youth and education as we describe it as not just a passive membership or engagement opportunity, but look, these are our future volunteers. These are the future area chairmen and chairwomen of committees. These are the future national board members. These are going to be the folks that lead us to that next phase of our organization. So look, kids are like sponges. Why shouldn't we give them opportunities? Why shouldn't we start high school chapters? Why shouldn't we really double down on collegiate chapters and really focus on, no pun intended, educating
Mm-hmm.
the future leaders of not only this organization, but just future leaders in general that are ready to go out there in their own communities of and whatever community means to them and lead
Yeah.
by example and learn once again, hey, I'm I'm here to serve. Hey, I raised my hand. Hey, I'm used to that. And to use your phrase, they're willing to walk through the door, but they're not going to stand in the doorway.
Yeah.
And I
Oh,
think
so
that,
true. And UGA this year, um, they had more students there than they had adults, which of course we always want the adults to come because they have the deeper pockets. But it was mind blowing to see these kids that were committed, and I'm talking like a couple hundred kids
yeah,
at this banquet, and you're right, like it's not just about hunting. It's about community. So these kids are learning leadership just by being involved because they've got to go out into the community and ask. Hey, they've got to educate about conservation. They've got to learn about laws and the things that are happening not just here in our state but nationwide. Because
yeah,
these are nation like we are raising money, but it's going for the ducks where the ducks are.
yeah, yeah,
So it was just so impressive to me to see these kids that love to be there. They weren't there for a party. It's not a party. It's a fundraiser to
yeah.
do, to pay ahead, pay forward. And they took it so serious. I was so impressed with this group of kids. They're not really kids, I guess. They're young adults.
But they get it. And
Yeah.
I think that what we as an organization, and I'm just using Ducks Unlimited, I'm not saying anybody else isn't doing it right, but I think in general, this is engaging our youth, exposing them to leadership, to responsibility, look, to
Mhm.
fundraising, to sales, but it's also teaching them about conservation and the importance of conservation, and that hunters, right, are the world's number one conservationist, and that there's no better way to be a true conservationist, in my opinion, than to hunt with a four-legged friend, right? And so we're exposing them to that world. Let's be honest, hunter recruitment and retention numbers are down across the United States over the last 2 decades, right? I know you were only five 2 decades ago, but when we talk about looking at the young folks that we as a society are getting out into the wild blue yonder and into wild places into God's creation, those numbers are simply down. And I would argue that a lot of it has to do with these little black boxes that are always taped to our ears, or our fingertips. And it's our responsibility as well to expose the future leaders and the next generation. Hey, you know what? There is something outside these four walls that's pretty dadgum magical. And it's a whole lot of fun. And it may be 4:30 wake up call, and it may be wet and it may be cold, but there's nothing like watching that
Nothing like
sunrise
no.
with whistling wings, or watching those feet come down and somebody calling the shot.
Looking at your dog saying thank you so much for putting me in that boat.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, so another thing that I have thought about too is we always look to the older generations to have all the wisdom. And it's almost like the younger generations don't want to step into that leadership role because they just don't feel qualified. Like I was guilty of that. And so the pressure for me as a female, I could only imagine, but maybe for a man, it could be even more pressure because they're expected to be the expert, and it takes years to gain that knowledge, and it takes miles. And so there's a lot of things, that life just doesn't offer you, but it doesn't mean that you can't continue the passion. I think that was the biggest lesson that I learned. It's like, we just got to encourage other people to get involved. And hopefully the people that we encourage even outgrow us. Right. And so that's the whole mentality of it. You never let age hold you back. I mean, we were young when we started.
Yeah.
So, I look at that, I'm like, that was such a great lesson for my kids because they don't know that they can't be an influence for good, for conservation, and their kids. And so I just want to encourage everybody else, like, you don't have to wait until you're part of the oldest generation in the room to have a voice.
Well, and remember, age is just a number, right? And there are times, I mean, let's be honest, there are times when I would sit in a duck blind as a young duck hunter, and I don't mean young necessarily in age as much as young in duck hunting tenure.
Yeah.
And there's a time to shut up and listen and learn.
Yeah.
right? And when do you stop calling? When do you call the shot? When do you call the hunt? As it may be very simple, but I think when we talk about future leaders, we're empowering the youth, whether it's high school or college age students, as we're talking about in this scenario. We're empowering them and encouraging them to go out and A, be leaders, B, be conservationists, and C, along the way, have a lot of fun with the fund raiser. And I think we're teaching so many valuable lessons. And there may be times, right, when you're a young DU volunteer, young in tenure, that it may be the time to be quiet, to listen and to learn, because to go back to your earlier point, somebody's there to help teach and coach and guide and lead. But there's going to be a day and a time when you're being called on to step up
Mhm.
and to leave your mark,
And
right?
it
You
might
know
be
this,
earlier than you expect.
right?
Yeah.
And we've got this new capital campaign going on right now. We've got Wetlands America Trust and so many wonderful things going on at a high level with Ducks Unlimited. But there's this catchphrase that has been introduced of lead a legacy. And I think when you really think about that word legacy, how powerful is that for somebody to say, like JC, to say, I got my start, I got my exposure, I got my first taste of Ducks Unlimited when I was knee high,
Yeah.
because then you understand how big that world is, going back to where we started this conversation, that family, that world. And there will be a time when you're called on to be that big brother, that big sister, that leader, that guider, that influencer. And I think we're giving the young people an opportunity to be empowered and engaged, like has been missing in our generation over the last 20 or 25 years.
Yeah, well, it's something that I think about every single week. There's not a week that goes by that I don't put on a DU hat and say, "Thank God for Ducks Unlimited." I am so grateful to get to live this life. And it was a long time before I had real appreciation for the duck world and the duck dog, but I never overlooked the influence it had on my life.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you. I just can't thank you enough.
Well, but I think that, and I appreciate you saying that, but I think it's important to remind people that it does take two to tango, right? Like, don't be a bystander, don't be a wallflower. Give back, get involved. Katie's grandfather had a tremendous impact on my life before his passing. I named my firstborn child after him, and he had a phrase: "You've got to pay a little rent to your community." And he meant sometimes paying rent meant giving of your time, your talent, or your treasure. Your community might mean your little literal geographic community. It might mean your Sunday school class, a Ducks Unlimited committee, or mentoring, students. Right? It meant a lot of things, but what it meant was get off your butt, raise your hand,
Yeah.
walk through the door, and be engaged. And I just, that's something I believe in, and I'm glad that you walked through the door and didn't just stand there and stare at us and wave from afar. But I
Was a
think,
little intimidating.
and
Yeah.
and that's
It
okay,
was.
right?
Yeah.
It's okay. I mean, it's intimidating when I go and have to talk to a group of fourth graders about government, right? But if
So
you
y'all
sit
don't
up,
know, but Matt is also a House representative, and that was really cool to go through that. And our DU whole chapter just rallied around you, and it was a really fun time. Your first election.
yeah, it elections are long, drawn out, and difficult, and it's an election year, and we're not here to talk politics, but it
But we can. You can always come back on.
yeah, we can talk about the role of public policy and conservation,
Yeah,
right?
I would love it.
There you go. There you go. Well, I'll come back and talk with you anytime about any topic.
Okay, guys, we will have Matt back on, and if you're local, then you will figure out why you should definitely vote for Matt Dubnik.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. I appreciate you.
Well, I know that you're busy and you have to get back to the office, but it was a pleasure to have you on and reminisce about how we got started and the things that we love. And it's crazy to think that we could ever enjoy this process any more than we did back then. But it's better, I think, because our kids are bigger.
Amen. Amen. It's fun.
All right. Well, my dog's coming home, and the next month you guys will have to come up. We'll throw some marks.
Love it. I'll bring Burton.
All right. See you
All right.
soon. Thank
See
you.
ya.